Before we begin the video, we want to let you know this is not tax advice. This video is for educational and learning purposes only. Now, the important disclaimer is out of the way. Let's sit back for a while to see how last year ended.
When the pandemic started in 2020, closing businesses around the world, Indonesia braced for a difficult fiscal year, especially the fourth quarter. But 2020 was not so bad. It was the aftershock of 2021 that really gutted the state budget. When considering Indonesia's target revenue for 2020 versus the actual revenue generated by the Directorate General of Tax, DGT, the deficit was 129 trillion rupiahs. Meanwhile, 2021 fiscal year milestone up to the third quarter is a 594 trillion rupiah deficit. This strain is what led to the adoption of the new Harmonized Tax Law and Voluntary Disclosure Program, or we will call it as VDP later on. Quite similar to 2016 Tax Amnesty and 2008 Sunset Policy programs. VDP, as the current agenda, is a 6-month voluntary program encouraging taxpayers to disclose their undeclared assets. To put it simply, it gives tax evaders an opportunity to become tax compliant with the benefit of a lower tax rate if the taxpayer chooses to disclose and reinvest their assets into government bonds, natural resource processing, or renewable energy. The VDP will run from 1 January 2022 to 30 June 2022. So, what's new about the program? Many people questioning whether the DGT have the financial and HR capacity to handle the VDP. The outlook leans towards yes, with a possible weakness when addressing fiscal years that already fall under the statute of limitations period. The expired tax period set by the government as the maximum amount of time that parties in a dispute have to initiate legal proceedings. This is Gema Consult, and we're going to have a little sneak peek into DGT's secret lab. Does the DGT have enough resources to execute the new Voluntary Disclosure Program? The DGT has been busy boosting HR and building a stronger technological and financial structure, making progress to overcome the new load that will be created in 2022. The first step was to issue supporting regulations to carry out the process. In 2020, the Minister of Finance, Sri Mulyani Indrawati, issued a regulation to formulate 2020 to 2024 Ministry of Finance (MOF) strategic plan that would directly shape human resources to become better organized and include adaptive personnel who are technology savvy. This HR strategy includes a minus growth policy through a moratorium on new personnel recruitment, redistribution, and implementation of exit strategies. DGT also formulated a breakthrough, restructuring the composition of HR core support through competency development and internal job vacancy. The fulfillment of managerial, technical, and socio-cultural competencies that are integrated and based on IT also in place. Meanwhile, they also speed up in modernizing and streamlining of HR services through digital transformation. Additionally, the minister directed the DGT to stop the personnel volume growth, known as a minus growth strategy, which will make the leaner and more efficient institution. One approach to achieve a consistent minus growth strategy is through a moratorium on the recruitment of general civil servants and graduates of the State Finance Polytechnic. By implementing the minus growth policy over the next 5 years, it will encourage the use of technology and enterprise architecture, as well as encourage competency development as an alternate to meeting employee needs. The result will be a ministry that can carry out its business processes through the use of information technology with a controlled ratio of personnel expenditures. There is one caveat, however, to the minus growth strategy to be implemented efficiently. The new thinking of working must be applied as a work pattern, and enterprise architecture and digital transformation must remain in effect so its impact can be calculated in 2023. Other strategies that involve the Big Four public accounting firms for improvements must also be taken into account. For example, the MOF, Ministry of Finance, already engages Deloitte Consulting for project management and quality assurance. However, on 1 July 2021, the MOF issued regulation as an amendment to the previous 2020-2024 MOF strategic plan. This amendment changed the moratorium plan. Initially, the MOF suspended new personnel recruitment. With the adjustment, they altered the total headcount to be hired. Given all that has been going on, there is a strong indication that the DGT is preparing to overcome the new workload the VDP will generate. Technology will be another obstacle, but the government is preparing IT facilities to make sure operations run smoothly. The Director of Counseling, Services and Public Relations of the DGT, Neil Madrin Noor, stated that the DGT has prepared VDP infrastructure. The government plans to carry out asset reporting through electronic channels, including the tax certificates. Everything will be fully automated to streamline the process rather than rely on manual work. PricewaterhouseCoopers has been engaged for the Core Tax Administration System project, which will support user-friendly services for taxpayers and simplify the DGT's own business processes. Now the interesting part, the expired tax period issue, where the real tax planner sees it as the taxpayer's issue rather than the DGT's. The government also has a methodology to dig into inaccurate tax payments and reports, but may fall short when addressing fiscal years that already fall under the statute of limitations period. There are 3 groups of fiscal years for corporate taxpayers to pay attention to during VDP implementation. The open audit years, which are the taxpayers' 2017 to 2021 books. The expired but not a safe zone year, 2016, when the tax amnesty program was in place. And the expired but risky fiscal years covers your 2012 to 2015 books. For 2012 to 2015, since the tax framework is already established, making these years expired, there is no incentive for taxpayers to report unreported assets if a case has not been opened against them. One highlight that intensely being a gentle nudge for taxpayers is, by law, DGT might expand the statute of limitations to 10 years under tax crime formality. But if the DGT does not visit a business during the 6-month period of the VDP, nothing will happen. This realization is one of the major reasons some taxpayers see the VDP as unattractive, and they might play a chance on the view that the DGT as unprepared for handling the caseload. Outlook-wise, DGT is weighed to be more than ready with the shaped resources, therefore using playing a chance approach would be unreasonable. The VDP has the potential to be a win-win for both sides depending on how the government handles it. Changes in HR and technological infrastructure show the DGT's commitment to easy reporting, but are still some issues to iron out. Either way, 2022 is poised to be an interesting year for Indonesia with an increase in resources and incentives for businesses to become compliant. So what do you think about all of this? Is DGT ready to execute the VDP? Or is it interesting enough for you and your business?
Before we begin the video, we want to let you know this is not tax advice. This video is for educational and learning purposes only. Now, the important disclaimer is out of the way.
A new year is on the horizon, and it will bring with it the start of Indonesia's new Voluntary Disclosure Program, which is part of the new harmonized tax law. Many are applauding the new program, saying it gives businesses a chance to become compliant while also helping to boost the state budget. Others remain skeptical. Success from the government's point of view will require high participation, so a substantive amount of underpaid tax is disclosed. This will result in higher additional tax payments at a time when the state is in significant need of revenue as the pandemic continues to wreak havoc around the world. While the VDP has the potential to bring much-needed funds to programs and operations, which will ultimately help Indonesia's economy, certain flaws might make taxpayers hesitant. For the corporate taxpayers, tax years that fall under the statute of limitations are one example. Cost is another issue. This is Gema Consult, and we're going to discuss an interesting perspective that remains taboo for the past 6 months. Does Voluntary Disclosure Program need to be more appealing to the taxpayers? To increase participation, the VDP can become more attractive to taxpayers with the implementation of a few additional measures, specifically transparency and thought leadership. However, law enforcement is not the way to drive voluntary tax compliance. From individual taxpayers' perspective, it is crystal clear that VDP is extremely beneficial for them. But how about the corporate taxpayers? Now that's what the public call interesting. One of the main drawbacks for participating in the program is disclosure involving fiscal years that have reached the statute of limitation. From a benefit standpoint, when taxpayers recall the tax periods between 2012 and 2015, the benefit of disclosing unpaid taxes is arguably zero because the government may not open any dispute cases against offending businesses. The government has been hesitant to address this flaw in the VDP, focusing more on technical rationality, specifically tariffs and the tax base. But taxpayers want transparency. The government could start to focus more on substantive rationality, which should cover 3 areas that are expected to affect participation the most: cost, benefits, and risks. Cost is something many businesses are concerned with the most. When looking at cost versus benefit, the cost is arguably high for businesses who do not have proper financial record keeping. Starting to build a compliance-ready balance sheet and profit and loss statement for closed tax years is time-consuming and expensive. Businesses must bear those costs themselves. Focusing on closed tax years as opposed to open tax years that are not covered under the VDP makes the entire program less attractive for corporate taxpayers. Though costs are a factor, a business can benefit in the long run by taking care of issues during the 6-month VDP timeline. VDP offers businesses a chance to avoid tax crimes, and Directorate General of Taxes (DGT) made it concise to the public. One of the categories of tax crime is if the taxpayer performed inaccurate financial record keeping, accounting, or bookkeeping intentionally. Interpreting what is intentional from the harmonized tax law have a clear standard. 4th-time tax collection letter issuance due to inaccurate internal accounting process might be deemed as intentional incorrect reporting that triggers tax crimes formality. Above all else, law enforcement should not be an option for driving voluntary tax compliance. To persuade those that are skeptical about participating in the VDP, the DGT should expand collaboration with top-tier corporate leaders, successful startup figures, consultants, business incubators and accelerators, and other relevant business influencers to drive interest in the program. The government has already been planning a cooperation with various associations such as the Indonesian Business Association, or APindo, and the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Since the VDP has limited benefits for corporate taxpayers, a thought leadership campaign is a smart idea. But the DGT should not limit collaborations to only APindo and Indonesian Commerce Chamber. By expanding the reach of the campaign, they can create a strong message about reaching business sustainability through excellent financial record keeping and commitment to compliance. Thought leadership is a tactic that marketers use to build credibility for their brand. In this regard, the DGT's branding and message can combine accounting and compliance with business sustainability. This is an indirect approach that focuses on how accounting plays a vital role in running a business. Not only does it help businesses track income and expenditures, it ensures statutory compliance and provides investors, management, and the government with quantitative financial information that can be used in business decisions. The DGT can also emphasize that a commitment to compliance will enable the taxpayer to avoid unplanned cash outflow from future unreserved tax payments and extra costs from sanctions and penalties. With technological advances and social media at our fingertips, thought leadership campaigns are more impactful during this era of personalized content marketing. Brute force is not. Data shows that market segmentation in Indonesia is 30% micro, less than 50 million in assets, which make up the majority of businesses. These businesses need access to distributors, personal safety, and corporate taxation. Taxation is among the top 5 needs of businesses, showing that taxpayers want to comply, but they need trust and transparency to do so. A solid and well-thought-out campaign can clarify the purpose of the VDP, strengthen the DGT's voice, build an approachable presence, and create mentorship opportunities, especially through collaborations. Law enforcement will only make taxpayers and businesses more hesitant and resistant. The VDP is a chance for the government to boost funding for needed resources while providing businesses a 6-month window to become compliant. But the DGT must make it more appealing through thought leadership. Flaws and drawbacks in the program need to be publicly addressed through substantive rationality, and campaigns must bring in a variety of collaborators that can spread positive messages that appeal to today's audience. Brute force through law enforcement should be avoided if the DGT wants to gain trust and show people how the VDP and harmonized tax law will ultimately benefit Indonesia in the coming years. After all, the next 5 to 10 years will determine if Indonesia's economy has what it takes to gain the coveted developed country status. So, what do you think about all of this? Is VDP attractive enough for you to participate in? Or is it extremely beneficial for you? Let us know in the comment section below. Make sure you like it, as now you know that compliance culture is not an overnight homework. Why not subscribe, as we will keep on bringing you more great videos like this. Until next time, see ya!